Welcome back. Now, over the weekend, a homeless woman named Natasha Smith sadly passed away whilst she was sleeping on Dublin streets.
Joining us to discuss the current state of homelessness in Ireland is Paul Killen, who overcame addiction and homelessness with the help of Tiglin's services, and founder of Tiglin, Aubrey McCarthy. Good morning.
Good morning
to you both. It's great to have you both with us. Listen, Aubrey, first of all, we should put our condolences out to Natasha Smith, of course, who died sleeping rough over the weekend. It's put homelessness right back into the forefront of people's minds again.
We're at a strange time. We have nearly 17,000 people in emergency accommodation. Nearly 5,500 of those are children. And then you have a death of Natasha on the street on Friday, in her 40s, beautiful lady. And she happened to be staying in a tent right opposite our Lighthouse Homeless Cafe on Pearse Street. And one of our guys, Natasha was in with us on Thursday, and we had a musical evening. And then on Friday morning, one of our guys was passing and her partner called out for help, and so we performed CPR, Declan did, and unfortunately it didn't work, and the paramedics came along and took her to hospital, but she didn't make it. And this is the third one of our clients that has passed since Christmas. So people that are living on the streets with complex needs, I mean, it's a serious, vulnerable position to be in, and you can sort of see more needs to be done. Housing isn't going to fix this without the proper support, because people with addiction, with trauma, with mental health, they have their own needs, and they feel safer on the streets. They feel they're in control, they feel they're independent, so they're not going to take up the offer of housing.
And it's so holistic, and it's really interesting. We're going to get to that, because Paul, I'd love to talk to you about your story. Yeah. In the 80s, you ended up homeless. So can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, well, I kind of got expelled from school when I was 13, 14, so at that time, I kind of started to experiment. I hadn't realised I had trauma from being a kid. So to be accepted into society, I started taking drugs, heroin. That was the new thing there at that time. So into that, so kind of, I gave him a great background of a home. I had a home there, but I chose drugs. So living on the street was easier. All I wanted was the money for the drugs. I didn't care where I put my head down at night, as long as I had something. I was warm. I had that electricity blanket, as I used to call it. But yeah, so that led, I just went over to London to make, at that time you could get dowels in different boroughs. Lived on the streets over there, like 14, 15 years of age, independent. I kind of just was enjoying life, but I didn't know what was coming down the road. Like, it was a new experience taking drugs at that time to me. Came back kind of in and out with that me family home, but was living on the streets, going in and out of hostels, didn't feel safe in hostels, so it was easier for me to sleep in a doorstep or behind a wall. There was a place in Jobstown I used to sleep, in Tally. In the chapel grounds, I used to put cardboard around and then blocks to block the wind coming in at night. Do you know what I mean? So I'd done that in and out over the years, got my own places through the council, but the addiction was more important. My house just became a meeting point for everybody, so it wasn't my home. So I was safer on the streets than I was in my own house. That's the way I looked at it growing over the years, and years went on, addiction went on, in and out of prisons, sleeping, back to England, went to Birmingham, slept in there. I met a man that worked in not the corporation, in a housing estate over there, and he let me stay in the shed while further workers come onto the building site, so I had to be out at 6, so it was like a little roof, but it wasn't mine, so it was car parks I slept in. It's just in and out, just homeless, addiction, homeless, prison, in and out. Came back to Ireland.
And a story that there are so many people that we're hearing about, and it's growing, the numbers in Ireland as well. What was the turning point for you? When did you realise that you needed help and was able to turn your life around?
I was in and out of treatment centres, but I was always put back into the inner city, so the treatment centres were great for 3 months. I classed that as a rest, give me body a rest. But the minute I walked in, I knew what I was doing when I was going out. Do you know what I mean? I already had a pre-planned. So I came to the stage that one morning I woke up, one night I was sitting in my place and the young fella wanted to kill me. And I always went by the lighthouse over the years. I knew the lighthouse. I used to walk by and say, I'll be back now in a minute, I have my food ready. Like, it was filled with clothes. I was saving money for drugs. That's what the lighthouse was for me. It was kind of, but it was a lifesaver as well, because I was able to go in some nights if it was cold, sit there for an hour or two and just then hostels, ringing hostels, not getting in, streets. Then, as I said, Jerry Ganley, that works in the home service, he's moved on from there, works with another part of Tiglin now. He'd always give me the form, the sign to go into Tiglin, and I was like, wait, leave me alone, I'll be ready. So that a week before that, I threw it, I said, here, get off me back, you're annoying me. Walked on. Then that Tuesday morning I woke up and I stopped all medication for a long time with my immune system and all that. So I said, I have to go to the hospital, there's something telling me to go. So I went to the hospital and I hadn't seen my doctor in about 10, 20 years. The main man that I hadn't seen from years. So he told me, he said, look, Paul, this is the alternative. You either stop smoking crack or you're dead. That was it. It's about 6 or 7 weeks. My immune system, if you know what it was like that, it was ready to collapse, but I couldn't see it. So I kind of made the decision to stop smoking crack that day, and moved off down to family friends down in Ennis for the 2 months. And the 1st of September, I went into Tiglin and I haven't looked back.
1st of September 2021.
1st of December.
1st of December 2021.
I haven't looked back since.
You were 7.5 stone.
Yeah. Now
you run half marathons, you run up in around Bray, around Wicklow, you do all these sort of things. You've worked with Tiglin, Aubrey. This is unbelievable. We're talking decades of addiction, Paul, decades of addiction. So I know that there's people at home who are looking at family members. Their hearts are broken, do you know, their homes are destroyed, and they're holding on for any little bit of hope. And Paul, this is unbelievable. So what are you doing in Tiglin?
What I love about Paul, he's an example to his peers of someone that actually has spent decades in addiction, decades that was written off, and now Paul is a pillar of the community in Greystones. We have a sauna, a bakery and a cafe called Rise at the Cove. Sure, Paul's always in the sauna. He entertains the multitudes in the community. But not only that, he's an example of what somebody can do when they turn their lives around. The wonderful thing about Tiglin is we don't just deal with addiction, we deal what happens after. So housing, education, social enterprise, all of that. So Paul's got into education, he's on Tinder, so he's all of these different things happening.
That's a type of education, all right.
It's a different type of addiction now.
I'm never going to live that one down. I'm going to get sick for the rest of the week.
Paul, tell us about the running though and how much that's helped. And I know you want to try and get into the Dublin Marathon as well as a real aim for you.
I applied for the Dublin Marathon there on the new ballot system and I didn't get it, but that is one of my dreams to do that, and that's got to do with Focus or in the running club. I get the same adrenaline and buzz out of running that I did taking crack. Wow. That is my go-to. Other people go to meetings, I go to running because I'm embedded down in that community. And for the likes of Simon L, they've brought me a lot, and I've been accepted. I've been accepted for just me. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? That is one of my goals. That is my goal, is to run the Dublin City Marathon on the streets that I was homeless and in addiction for years. And I can run there and have memories and bring friends that have gone and bring them with me on that run, because I do think of them every day. I mightn't show up, but they'll always be there because I know their kids and their grandkids now. And do you know what I mean? So I'm just one of the lucky ones to be still standing here today.
It's just so amazing. Honestly, it's so amazing to hear this, because I know people are struggling, whether they're in addiction or around addiction. So, Aubrey.
And Miriam, that's why when people are watching even this, when you've written off even a family member, mother, father, son or daughter, never give up. And the Lighthouse on Pier Street, what we try to do there, we have a doctor, we have a barber, we have live music, we have a Kaylee, we have all sorts of stuff going on. So it adds dignity to a person in absolute chaos. And over time, they can build up trust and then ask you for help. And that's what happens. As Paul said, he came to Ger, he was given the opportunity several times, but it wasn't his time. And now it's his time, and he's sober 5 years.
Because there's one thing that I notice about all of this when it comes to addiction and when it comes to homelessness, that an awful lot of time you're a statistic. People walk by you on the street and, you know, where's the humanity? There's an awful lot of issues because we're getting to numbers now of 17,000 and it's a statistic, but these are all people.
Yeah.
Natasha. Actually, the numbers who've passed away on the streets since Christmas time, and Natasha being the most recent in that, will become a statistic, unfortunately. And the tributes, like her family have spoken, she was only in her 40s.
A mother of 2 kids.
Do you think that because, Paul, for you, what's life like now? Because a lot of us don't understand addiction, right? And you're out the other side. Can you just tell us how you're feeling?
I can wake up happy in the morning. I can wake up, be grumpy in the morning, but I don't need a drug to get me up out of bed. And the first thought in the morning is just to get up and have a cup of tea now. Not the first thing, the minute you wake up, where will I get one of the drugs? When you're in addiction, that's all you care about. And you'll stamp over everybody, family. And the most important thing is, my family, my kids, all knew me all their life as an addict. And the last 4 years, yeah, it's been big. I have my daughter, I have my son, I have 2 other kids, but I can understand where they're coming from. I can look back, yeah, I understand that, but they know me better. If I'm still clean after 4 years, I'm finished with it. I wouldn't get I wouldn't get a day clean. For me to get 4 years clean, for me, it's just a miracle in my way, the way I look at it.
Paul, just incredible to talk to you this morning. Wishing you all the best. Huge congratulations. And I know, Aubrey, you've got centres all around Ireland. You're always looking for help, because people are always looking for help. And just got to try to believe in it.
Got to try to believe and never, ever give up. And if you go onto our website, Tiglin.ie, but there's all other services like Focus and Simon who do the same work. But I set up Tiglin 20 years ago, and I just see lives like Paul that have changed and turned around. They keep me going.
Aubrey, amazing. Thank you so much. Aubrey McCarthy, of course, founder of Tiglin, and Paul Killen. Amazing. Good on you, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thanks
and
a million.
Thank you for sharing your story with us this morning. It's phenomenal.